So here it is. I picked this game up on the Steam Winter Sale of 2022 after my friends told me that this game is a lot like Diablo 2, but better. I kind of feel like that's a fair comparison, but let me dive deeper. Whenever you say a game is like Diablo 2, you immediately get my peak interest because Diablo 2 represents my favorite RPG. It's one of my favorite RPG games in general, and it is my favorite action RPG game. And for those that don't know, an RPG that involves a little bit of action, or I guess more specifically, not turn-based RPG. Whereas with Final Fantasy, you do your battles in turns. In stuff like the original Diablo, you don't take turns. The stuff happens live. So, yes. So, Grim Dawn was published way back in 2016, and it was designed and published by Crate Entertainment, purveyor of another game that's going to be winding up on this channel soon. Let's start with the graphics. Graphics are beautiful. I would say it looks a little better than the average game that was made in 2016. But again, it doesn't have to do as much since it's only showing a limited section of the game world on a top-down. I especially like the way the lighting looks in this game. Like whenever you cast a spell that involves lighting effects, they're done really well. The shadows are done really well. But the character models, they're great, you know? Some people experienced a little bit of micro-stuttering during the gameplay. I only experienced that when I ran into giant hordes of monsters, whenever the game would intentionally spawn a lot. And you generally want to run the 64-bit version of the game. That takes care of a lot of issues. Map design is also really great. There's a lot of varied environments, but it's all kind of tied together under this dark theme. Also, the UI looks really good. I mean, nothing to complain about, and I never thought I would have to rate a UI in the year 2022, but with a lot of launches of new games, I kind of have to, so. Sound design is pretty good, actually. The shortcomings in the ambient noise that's made, along with some of the sound effects. I like some of the vocalizations of the death, like the death noises of certain enemies. The overall sound design is fine, but what pushes it into good to very good territory is that soundtrack. I never cared much about the story in these types of games. If you can go along with the Lovecraftian darkness of a story, then you'll be right at home in this game. So the basic gist of it is you wake up in this post-apocalypse environment in this town that you start off in, and the town is having a lot of issues that you start off with. There are factions on the northeastern part of the village that tend to wreak havoc on the village itself. And you go out, deal with those factions, deal with the leaders, deal with a certain number of enemies within the factions. And then they want to get resources over to the west. So they have you build a bridge that will allow them and everybody else to go to the west. And there's even bigger, badder gangs out there through which you eventually circle back and destroy the big bad evil boss, and that's the main story. I haven't even played the DLC yet, so I can't comment on the DLC story, but I heard it does a lot of cool gameplay stuff, like raising the level cap and unlocking the ability to respec your character. We'll get into more of that in the gameplay section. But the thing that I like most about this story is, and it kind of blurs the line between gameplay and story, but there's no karma bar in this game. There's no way that the game explicitly states, hey, you did a good thing, or hey, you did a bad thing. There are alliances and favor ratings among all the factions in the game, but you get to pick which faction you align with or don't align with based on just how you feel, and I tended to pick based on what would do good for my character. So I picked one of the shooty magic classes, which I'll have to get into in a little bit here with the gameplay section. It's not inherently evil, neutral, or good based on a karma bar in the game. The game doesn't decide that. You do. It's not like Fallout whenever you get somebody strongly disliked that, and then the little bar slides down. No. I basically have to choose between doing the lesser evil thing, the greater evil thing, or not doing anything at all. These choices are reflected very well in the game. So, yeah, with that, we segue onto game design. So this is the meat and potatoes. This is why I play these action RPGs. You can give me just insane big hordes of enemies to slaughter, and I will be a happy camper no matter how the environment and story goes. Let me first say that they nailed the concept of I constantly want to improve the character. They nailed that aspect down. They did a great job with that design. The initial dopamine hits whenever you're getting better items to slaughter the enemies faster, to getting better items so you can slaughter the enemies faster. That basic formula from Diablo 2 is in full effect here. You get a tiered rating system, you get, magic items, you get items that are definitely for your class, and unlike certain modern action RPG games from Blizzard, you can pick up and use items that were not explicitly designed for your class. And sometimes you'll get a higher DPS, but that comes with trade-offs. My shooty character would have benefited, had a bigger number of damage per second by wielding some magic swords, which doesn't make a lot of sense whenever you consider, hey, my guy has to be right by the enemy for a sword attack, and has been known to die. But anyway, we'll get into that a little later. So that basic element from D2 has been preserved. And if you haven't figured it out now, D2 is going to be the metric that I use to judge a great action RPG game. So, they got that down. What else can they add on top of that? Well, they borrowed classes from Diablo 2, and basically action RPG games in general, where you get to pick what class you want to be based on your playstyle. Through playing the game, I found out that demolitionists do heavy damage per second. The damage per second game is ridiculous on these. However, you can't get close to the enemy because you'll either always have low defense or low health points. Low total health points down there. Which makes sense because all of your attacks are ranged, so you have to strategically plan your attacks. And I like playing that way. I wish there was a little bit more action in it, though. With this specific build, I can just casually run around impending doom, the poison pools on the map, and fire and whatnot. Whereas with Diablo 3, I had a dodge key that I can dart around the enemies and do crazy triangles and star points and just do the general leaping dodge moves. So the only criticism with this particular build in this particular game is that I wish I had a dodge key that I can dance around the enemies and hazards. But we'll get to what counteracts that here in a second. Point in being, every class seems to be well balanced, And they thought of the pros and cons. They implemented the class system a little differently in this than Blizzard did with D2. With Diablo 2, you picked your class right away. You're like, okay, I want to be a barbarian. In Grim Dawn, they have you go through your first 2 character levels with a little bit of like a tutorial action type thing. Your first couple of missions are introducing you to the gameplay elements. And then you get to pick your class after you reach level 2, which then gives you access to skill trees. Yes. So they borrowed skill trees from Diablo 2. For those that don't know, skill trees are basically a way of defining progression within active and passive skills, which happen just during gameplay while you're improving your character. So, for example, with this character, I could unlock Fire Strike very early in the game, which adds a element of fire damage to my primary attack, which is shooting. I'm like, yeah, sure. Lighting my bullets on fire sounds awesome. So you do that, and as you progress later in the game, you invest in the level ups. You eventually get to add a stun to where your fire attack can stun enemies for a split second, does lightning damage, and you just build up the basic skill that you learned way back. That's what a skill tree is. So, it's the progression of that and the progression of items. They kind of stack on each other and do this. They work together kind of like Diablo 2. So, this is where we start to get into what sets this game apart from Diablo 2 specifically. I'm here, I'm playing a class, this is awesome. Whenever you get to that certain point in the game where you're level 10 or above, you get to pick another class? Yes, ladies and gentlemen. Diablo 2 didn't do this, and I thought this was actually the first game to do this, but as it turns out, that honor belongs to Titan Quest, which came out before this and was published by Iron Lore. You pick your second mastery, and then you level up the skills that work with the skills that you picked for your first class. So since I already had a pretty strong presence of fire going in my first class, I think I picked either the Inquisitor or the Arcanist to combo that up, and then I started leveling up the passives in the Inquisitor part, in the Inquisitor mastery, so that I would still get a bigger bonus on my Fire Strike, as well as start unlocking some of the fire things that are in the Inquisitor class, so that this builds on this, which builds on that type thing. So yeah, you just keep building and building. And eventually I got to where I could do some of the Inquisitor skills with boosts from the Demolitionist class. And yeah, how they interact is actually pretty awesome, because it allows for 9 squared to be like 81 total combinations. There's no unfun build. That's basically what I'm trying to say. There's no garbage build. Every build feels fun in its own way. So if you want to be super tanky with your Blight magic hammer, you totally can. If you want to be shooty demolitionist with a dark side like my character, you totally can, who knows the art of pistol shooting as well as magic. It's all fun. It's all top level. And it's all rewarding whenever you get to that mid to late stage game. So, now you have 2 sets of skill trees to level up and try to get better with and meld together and everything. What else can you do to add to this insatiable dopamine triggering sequence of events? What else can you do? Well, have you heard about devotion? Specifically devotion in this game. Yes, that's right, it's another area with which to put more skill trees. So basically how devotion works is you have these things in the game world known as devotion shrines, which whenever you go up and interact with them, you either activate them and they spawn a wave of insane enemies for which you have to defeat, or you sacrifice an item to unlock these devotion shrines, which not only offer you loot, but they offer you these things known as devotion points, which you then spend in the devotion screen. And if you spend them a certain way, these devotion constellations, which are basically reskinned skill trees, whenever you level them all up, they then compound. If you pick the right ones, it'll compound with what you already have spec'd out in your classes. I still found it hard the solo stuff though, because I tend to gravitate towards these builds in these types of games, these characters that are known as either squishy or glass cannon builds, where basically if I get hit with a gust of wind, it's over. But on the flip side, if I stay back and do my damage, it's over for them. So it's well balanced. That is my personalized experience with Grim Dawn. I'm pretty sure I'll have to build like a tanky, like just an all-out melee build, because there are days when I just feel like running headfirst into a mob and swinging a hammer and delivering all types of damage. Needless to say, that entire character development arc was very satisfying when I can just press a button and just wipe away all of those hordes of enemies. So, it's all very fantastic, very rewarding at the end. What would I rate this game? As far as action RPGs go, it's my second favorite one. That's comparing it with Project Diablo 2, the modded version of Diablo 2, as well as Path of Exile and Lost Ark and all these types of things.